you must see many project ideas. I know you have a whole staff, lots of great ideas. How do you sort of pick out which ones you want to go for?
Sure. This is a long question. We have half an hour, right? But maybe let's start. We have a slide. Why do we see this slide? Let's go to the very first slide here. Sorry. Okay, there it is. Maybe framing a little bit what we're trying to accomplish before talking on what is the selection process and how we work.
That's great. Because I hear this word moonshot, and you're going to tell us what a moonshot is. Yeah. And it's maybe a little bit different than I might have thought. So please go for it.
Okay. Yeah, moonshot is becoming popular as a term.
Yeah.
I mean, it's been popular for a while, but for us, really, what we're trying to do, and this is the most important, we're really picking huge problems. There are many interesting problems in the world. There is a time opportunity for us, where you look at something like X, we really need to pick things which have an impact, which is such that if we find a solution, we could really have a true positive impact on mankind for millions or billions of people. So that's a huge filter. Many things will not survive that first filter. The second aspect is what we call the radical solution. And it's pretty obvious that if the solution you're going to use to solve a problem is pretty obvious and straightforward, that there are many other smart people with pretty deep pocket and a lot of time and a lot of energy who are going to use that solution. So for us, it is very unlikely that we're going to use our time wisely. And that puts that constraint that we want to find a slightly strange way to solve the problem. And that's what we call the radical solution. The last element, which is the founding blocks of what we do, is that we want breakthrough technology. I mean, we could be brilliant financial engineering people, we could be incredible public policy, but our tool is really technology. That's what we use, that's what we know, and this is another of the three main ingredients of making a moonshot.
Right.
So that is the core definition. How we choose them, we can go in more detail. That's a big question.
Well, one question in my, X was started in 2010 as the Moonshot Factory. I think I first visited it, maybe 10 years ago. So I'm curious how the strategy has evolved over those years. Has your thinking about what a moonshot project is, has that evolved? I for example, has noticed more projects that are taking advantage of Alphabet's expertise in AI and data science and automation. But the real question is, how has the strategy evolved?
In so many ways. I mean, just to be clear, I've been there for about 6 years, so I missed the beginning of the movie, but people told me lots of stories about it. I think there's a general framework, which is, at first, we're probably allowing people to get way more radical solution with maybe a little bit less rigor on, is this really going to work? And one trend that we've been following is to keep that extreme creativity, but becoming more and more demanding really on, we call them kill criteria, or really what are the evidence that this is worth investigating.
Even early.
Even early, and this is, keeping the invention, keeping that creative aspect, while progressively becoming more and more rigorous in what we do. And I think there's been a lot of progress there. I think there is also becoming much more rigorous on what I would say are really the kill criteria. That if you start a project and people who start the project are not able to really tell you what they want to demonstrate and what they want to prove, you probably are going to have a project that will turn into a zombie. And a zombie is a project which is half alive and keeps coming back out of the grave and never dying. And I think putting some very clear criteria on what we want, and we can take some examples just after this, is something which is super important. The third aspect is to be very aware of the strengths that we have, where we are continuously building our capacity and bringing new talent, new equipment, new discipline, but also to be incredibly aware of where the places we are good and the places where we have an advantage when it comes to developing those projects. We can go through some example if you
AI, I would suspect, data science, all the sort of expertise of Alphabet.
These are some starts. Let's go through an example. Let me show you a few fun moonshots. Not this one. Those slides are in a strange order. Okay. Let's
So these are some
first, yeah.
examples of projects that you're working
This
on.
is a project. I mean, this project is dear to my heart because the person who actually ran that project is sitting just there. The second thing is that we just killed this project, so the project is no more.
You just killed it, you said.
We just killed it.
Okay.
So let me tell you the story. This is a project, the name is Beard. Okay, that's the German side coming back. And this is a project which is related to the fact that obesity is a huge problem, that the quality of the food that people eat, I mean, fast food is not exactly the best thing for you, that you have food deserts in the US. I mean, if my kids goes to college in Walla Walla and in
Washington.
Portland, and God, I've discovered food deserts in the US. so there was really that challenge of, is there some new ways to prepare food that would provide the speed and the cost of fast food, but would really provide you some quality food? And this is a very broad subject. And one of the aspects, we can speak a bit to those slides. You can see we tried many ways to produce food efficiently. We created some new phased array microwave. We use high power laser. We made some simulation of heat propagation in a piece of steak. All those things were quite exciting. But one of the key aspects is that from the very beginning, we put that challenge that the team had to be able to prepare me a good meal in 2 minutes. And they worked very hard on this, like very hard. But at the end, it did not really work. I mean, the steak was okay. Things were a little bit unevenly cooked. But at the end of the day, we felt that we really explored the problem, but we also realized that there were no credible way to go and bring that technology to the market. And we just killed the project. But that was an example where instead of saying, oh, let's try something completely different, we had a very clear sense of what do we want to demonstrate and what will be the condition for that project to succeed.
And that was that 2-minute test.
And that was the 2-minute test. There were other, I mean, obviously,
Yes.
it's a little bit more than that, but that was the essence of it. You could tell any story. If you cannot produce it, it probably doesn't work.
Doesn't work.
But we produce incredible technology, and some of that, we have that, we call it technology compost. That a lot of the things that we discover, build, and learn will actually re-emerge in another project. So we are really quite good at what did we learn, how could we reuse it, and just put it on the shelf, but be ready to combine it in a different manner.
So these are tools that you're creating, you're developing, that you will have in hand.
Yes, we actually go a bit further than that. When we kill a project, we do what we call a tombstone. Tombstone, like we actually do not use a big piece of rock, but we really write what was the cause of death. We write the epitaph for the project. And we collect all those things in, we call it the tombstone storage. And periodically, we have that event that we call Tales from the Crypt, where we go back through those hundreds of projects, and we see, can we bring it back to life? Is this the right time? Did something change to bring it back to life? So maybe it will come back to life.
Yeah. I think you had a second example, did you?
Oh, I've got plenty of examples.
Okay.
So let's look at this one. This one is a project which is named TOG. Don't ask us where we find those names. This is very trivial.
TOG.
TOG.
Okay.
So yeah, and remembering just all the project name at X can be pretty exciting. But this was observing that transporting goods over ocean or river is a huge source of that a lot of energy is expended to do maritime transport. And the radical solution was to look at, could we transform boats to become trains? So instead of having a single boat, could you get lines of boats which are attached together, which can separate and dispatch in a dynamic manner, and potentially save quite a bit of energy by the fact that you're continuously drafting the boat which is in front of you. The goal was a certain improvement in efficiency, and more important, showing that some people outside of X will be excited about the idea. So we made prototype, we did a lot of numerical simulation. We reached probably an improvement of 10% in fuel efficiency. We took our little slide deck and started going around to present that to companies who are doing real maritime transportation. And they said 10%, it's not enough. It's
Right.
not good enough. So once again, we did not reach the criteria, and we killed it. I mean, from one day to another, we made a celebration. Everybody was actually okay because they bounced to something else, and we put it to rest.
That's interesting. I think the example of not radical enough improvement, incremental improvement, 10%, but that not enough for a
To make sense, it was not a moonshot. It's exciting. Maybe someone can take that back, and often we open source and document all the things that we have done so that someone else can start again from where we were. But this was not meeting the criteria.
And so pretty early in the process, you killed it.
Yes, I mean, you look at a project like that, this is a few months and a few people. I mean, I think people would be a little bit surprised to see how little resource we use at the beginning. And as a matter of fact, there's a purpose behind that, which is that if you give a team a lot of hires, a lot of money, a lot of equipment, they will have so much fun. But they will not focus on what is really important, which is, does it work, does it make sense? Right. And by providing that very limited amount of resource, people feel a bit of pressure and rush to go and let me demonstrate that this is wrong, which is one of the counterintuitive principle of how we work. We're really asking how much resource you need to show us that your idea is wrong. And people do that. This is pretty incredible.
Right. It seems like the answer came when you went out to the industry and asked them to understand their problems and what they wanted.
Yes, which is the collision with the real world. I mean, you could do incredible things in the lab and, once again, have a lot of fun, but periodically you just need to find the outside expert or people who will give you a very clear reality check. When you do a project, at one point you need to find people who are on the outside, who, I describe it, they need to be ready to suffer with you. And you know, there are many ways to suffer, but they need to get a commitment and showing that they're just not just nice, because people tend to be nice, or that they don't just want to work with Google. So it's having that evidence that someone really cares for what we have done.
Let me ask you about another failure, and perhaps one that predated you a bit, Loon, because if people don't know, it was a high-altitude balloons that delivered internet to places in the world that did not have access to internet. Amazing technology. I've seen the balloons. They developed a really great technology in terms of balloon technology, which is not an easy thing. Amazing technology, obvious problem it was addressing, and yet the project was killed, I think, last year. Tell us why it was killed. Are there lessons from that, which was a later stage project?
Sure. I mean, first of all, why did we do something like Loon? It's pretty obvious now in the world that providing telecommunication access is one of the best predictors for the improvement of quality of life in an area. Yes. Through education, through commerce, there are so many aspects where suddenly you bring bandwidth to an area which cannot have bandwidth. It is a transformation.
Yes, yes.
And you know, 4G, 5G are kind of nice, but you still have, even in Palo Alto, California, many areas where you cannot have decent cell phone signal. So this was this concept of why not use balloons, which do not need energy to float, can carry quite a bit of infrastructure to beam a cell phone signal on a pretty wide area, right? Those balloons were floating at 80,000 feet, so the horizon is pretty far. And probably the most interesting was that we had discovered that we could actually navigate those balloons, that by having a very accurate model of the wind direction in the atmosphere at different altitude, we could just, by changing the altitude of the balloon, get it to do very specific trajectory. Things like being launched from Nevada, Winnemucca, and floating all the way to Puerto Rico after the hurricane, and doing that in a remarkably deterministic manner. This was such a cool project. What we found at the end of the day is that it did not make economical sense. And that is something that you learn by actually building the thing and really learning all the details that you need to handle to make that into a real practical solution. And the balance between the value that we're able to create and the cost of doing those balloons was such that at one point the equation became wrong. And we do profit for purpose, because that's the way to scale it. And once we realized that it is unlikely we're going to be able to reduce so much the cost of the equipment that it started to not look like a moonshot anymore, we killed it. Nice thing, we published everything. So all the technology on how to make balloon, which can stay for a long time in the atmosphere, how to navigate them, all those things have been documented. So other application will come out of that. So this is the kind of place where let's not keep it secret and give a head start for the next person who is going to try similar technology.
Right.
But these are hard things, but the truth of the matter is that we hire people who, to their nature, and we can speak about team building, are so flexible on what they are interested by that the team who was doing Loon bounced onto many other type of project and technology. One which is working today is, for instance, the fact that the Loon balloon were connected through laser beam, so that you could create a grid of balloon across the atmosphere and get one point of intake for the data and distribute it as a network across those array of balloons which were floating. Well, in that process, we developed very good free space optic technology, meaning using laser light on a large distance to go and transmit a lot of data. This team became a new project, which is called Project Tara, which is in deployment. I mean, you can find them in India, Africa. This is something which is growing pretty fast. Actually, funny enough, the first prototype was installed on my neighbor's property because my house was just a little bit too low and we could not see the building directly. So once again, we will do whatever it takes to test the hypothesis. Yeah. But suddenly we are able to, for instance, bridge the Congo River where there were no data link between the two sides of the Congo River. And we're able to provide huge amount of bandwidth, and this is, of course, highly scalable. You want more bandwidth, it's not like radio. You just add another pair of transmitter receiver and you double your bandwidth. So this is an example where even if Loon does not exist anymore, you keep seeing all those things people experience transferring to new project and evolving.
Wow, and this came out of Loon. So it's a line of sight optical data transfer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That can cover quite long distance.
Wow.
The magic is in the detail. How do you make it reliable? How do you make it working even? We had that funny story where we had a prototype in India and we were surprised to see that once in a while the data link would stop working. Until we realized that some monkeys were climbing on the tower and shaking the tower because they thought this was so much fun. And we could see the gain just going up and down. So yeah, you discover lots of fun things.
One fun thing, we had a slide earlier. I was going to ask you, what do you do? What does your day work? What does your day look like? And I think you have a slide of some of the things that...
yeah, we have a few. We can go through that. So I'm CTO. I'm joking that no, it's not Chief Talking Officer or Chief Traveling Officer. I try to do technology. There is no day like any other. Every day is pretty different. And a lot of that is due to the fact that one of my role is to be aware and have a strong understanding of all the technology we do at X. And yeah, I cannot do that by myself. I mean, subject like biology will get my head to explode very quickly. So it is both having a small team, advisor, but really be on top of, does it make sense? Is this working? Are we progressing correctly? I'm also, let's find that slide. Now, let me go back. Sorry, we changed the order. Yeah, I'm also a guinea pig. For some reason, the teams discovered that I just love testing prototypes. So they're like, Benoit, we have that new experiment. I mean, could you be there at 4 o'clock? And please do not come in shorts. And I mean, you see two experiments here. One on the left is a project that we call Smarty Pants, which is really tackling a big issue. My dad is 87 years old, and watching him walk is painful.
Yes.
And he's spending more and more time in wheelchair. And we realized that now we have the technology from an actuator standpoint, control standpoint, that material science standpoint, which is a big one, that we are able to do pants that will help you walk. and that will balance you, prevent you from falling. And of course, they need tester because they want to see how is it really working. So periodically, I go in the lab, I put those things, which is still a little bit of work. Sometimes my legs will jump left and right, but they just instrument me, and I run up and down the stairs for 15 minutes, and then they just let me go. So that's fun. The one on the right was an experiment to see, I don't know what I think about it. They wanted to test my brain health, apparently. And they sat me, they did not shave my head, which was great, but they sat me for 20 minutes with that transducer on the back of my head. And I don't know what conclusion they drew. They never shared the results with me. I don't know what to think of that.
But two promising ones, maybe.
Yes.
The exoskeleton, you'll move ahead on that?
Yes, it is a moving project, yes. And it's a very difficult balance, right? It is how comfortable is it? How well does it work? What is the social cost of wearing something like this?
Do people want to use it?
Exactly. Yes. And you want to be able to determine that without making the ultimate prototype. So it is, how do you find that proxy to make that correct determination? Right. In my days, my job is also, I mean, one of the things which I love is I try to write code every day. I should not, but this is meditation for me. So the teams will go and pick me as an intern for 2 hours and ask me to write code or do a little bit of machining, which is strangely relaxing. But this is trying to get the right culture, the right people, looking at what are the technology where we need to bulk up, what kind of new lab technology do we need or equipment. Finally, there is also the role of being the person who appreciates the technology being done. I think that it is incredibly important to be the audience also sometimes, to just be the person who can respond to the work being done and appreciate it in a totally honest manner, because that creates such a strong technology culture. And that's a very fun part of
just the excitement around some of these things.
But my head I mean, literally, my head explodes a few times a week. You know, I've got a biology teacher who comes and teaches me biology, for instance, because my biology is not that good. So, so you keep learning and changing.
Oh, that's another question I have for you. I want to get some questions from the audience. So start thinking, and then there's some microphones coming around. So you just mentioned biology. How does X make sure it has the right expertise and sort of all the things that you want to do? Make sure you have the biologists, the chemists, the material scientists, as well as the programmers, the AI people. How do you sort of balance that expertise?
I mean, biology is fun, right? Biology, it's incredibly good engineering, absolutely terrible documentation. But more seriously, what we do is that, first of all, we need to be very aware of what other people are doing. And I think that having some periodic reality check to see if there are some really important things we did not catch, to see how good is our filter to go and catch innovation that will have a large impact. So for us, being able to be very aware, both on the university, but also in the investment community, to see what is happening is a very good way for us to calibrate and see if we're missing the boat or missing the next big train. The second one is to get good advisors. I mean, we are continuously looking for those people who are so well connected in a specific domain that they will tell us the hard truth, that, you know, you're really missing something really important in synthetic biology. And it's like, oh, really? The third aspect is diversity. And this is diversity both from origin or intellectual field, but also having people who come from many different domains and have been exposed to many research in other environments, so that, once again, we are certain we are covering the field pretty well. Alphabet is also a pretty good environment. I mean, Alphabet is full of very smart, diverse people. So I think that for us, just having a sense of what else is happening in Alphabet and using that to calibrate is another great way.
Do we have a question?
It's more of a comment. I know you and I spoke yesterday, and I find you to be so much fun and so imaginative. And we were talking about the speaker, the astronaut, and you were telling me when you were a child Could you imagine yourself floating around in space? And I said, he is so cool. But years ago, when I was working at the university, at the computer science department, I had several outdoor display cases in the hallway, and I would constantly post different types of new technologies that were emerging in the cases for the students to look at. And I posted something called Loon. And this was several decades ago. I'm going to date myself now. And it was a Loon, but it was attributed to Google, that Google had sent one up. And now here I am talking to the creator of Loon.
I was not the creator, to be clear.
Or should I
predates me
say,
little
a
bit.
person who was involved.
Yeah.
So, but it was attributed to Google having sent it up.
Oh yeah, I mean, X is part of Google, just to be clear.
Oh, okay, I'm
Yes.
sorry. Well, it's amazing. That's all I want to say.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
We have an online question from Renee. It's a question about problems that you identify. And the question is, are these problems imagined by people who actually experiences them? Or are they just sort of... So, and I think it's at the core is a really interesting question. You know, how do you... Identifying problems, are you because of your experience or because you're looking across the world? I'm not quite sure how to phrase that, but it seems like a very interesting question to me of how you really identify problems and what expertise you bring to identifying problems.
I'll use another photos, which is if I find the right photo. Yeah, all right. So agriculture.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that agriculture is a big problem, that we need to feed another 2 billion people in the next 30 years.
And you're probably not farmers that expert.
And I'm not, I mean, my great-grandfather was a farmer, but I've not done that much farming. I tend to kill most of the plant I try to grow, for that matter. So this was the place where let's really understand the domain. Let's really understand the problem. We may have an abstract notion that there is something really big to be done by combining compute and farming, but you will never really understand what you have to do until you start to spend time with people who are doing that every day and really suffer the problem and the real challenges of doing that. This one is a fun one, and that's how we did contact with the reality. This was a prototype we did for Project Mineral, which is really looking at combining computation and agriculture. And we had an hypothesis that using computer vision and machine learning, that we could make very good prediction on the yield of strawberry plants. Pretty gratuitous experiment, but in a week, we ordered 2 bicycles, 2-day shipping, because next day is more expensive. We built that thing in the machine shop at X.
Yeah.
We rented a U-Haul, and well, anyway, and we drove to Salinas, and we had the authorization from a farmer to go on the field, and people in the farm were looking at who are those people. But that was the start of starting from pretty incorrect assumption on what was needed and really understanding what is needed in agriculture today. Yeah. So you need that contact with the real world. I mean, otherwise you're in delusion, and this becomes seeing the world seen from Silicon Valley, right? You can imagine those types of posters.
So this is a prototype.
Oh, this was a prototype. I mean, that thing survived 2 trips to the field.
And then you have, I think you have
and
another
then
slide.
The next one, I mean, the fun thing is that we're 2 people navigating that thing, and it took us a few hours to realize we kept fighting each other with the wheel, so to really bend the frame. So that was a great workout. But that became this, which is that things which can do many assessment and measurements, is autonomous, can work with many different types of crops, and can really produce insights which changes the efficiency of agriculture. But this was how quickly can we test this to see if there is something there.
That's a great example.
One week. It's
1 week.
1 week, 2 people.
We have 10 seconds left.
Okay.
Your favorite technology these days, what gets you excited?
Many things. Biology is incredible. I think we're just scratching the surface of biology.
Of biology.
This is so complicated, but so powerful.
Yeah.
Probably a joint interest with you, material science.
Yes.
Every time we discover a new material, it changes the world.
Okay.
And we have new ways to discover those things, and
Yeah.
that is super exciting. But I tend to be excited about everything in technology. Yeah.
Those are two great examples, material science, biology, and we can see how machine learning, AI, data science is transforming the opportunities in those fields.
Oh yeah, you can test hypotheses that human would not explore. This is removing that, this is strange, but a human would never think of specific solution that big data or machine learning will explore. So there is that discovery, that joy of, oh my God, this solution is so bizarre, but so much better. So that is also super exciting.
So expect a X project on some of these areas soon. Thank you so much. It's been great. I really appreciate the.
Thank you, David.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed that. I found it really inspirational, both the technologies and then sort of the strategies, and just really exciting. Now I'd like to bring back Matt Honan, MIT Technology Reviews